Hi there, please join me in this video as I explore the Fisherman's Hut at Screebe in Connemara for some photographic compositions, and I delve a little into its history and background. Hi there, and welcome to this episode of Beyond the Photo with me, Damien Jackson. In this video, I'm at the old Fisherman's Hut in Screebe in Connemara. At the moment, it's about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. It's late December and it's pretty dull and overcast, and it's not looking like I'm going to get a colourful sunset. However, there is one bonus that I have in the cards today, and that's that it's very still. And I mean extremely still, so that I'm hoping for some good reflections. Now, even though there's nothing great in the sky, the rocks, the Fisherman's Hut itself, etc., they're reflecting in the lake like mirrors. So maybe I'll end up with a moody black and white, etc., or maybe I'll be able to, darken down the sky a bit and get some detail from it there. But unfortunately, the boat is gone. There used to be a boat parked beside the old house here, and also some nets, and I was here about 4 weeks ago, and they were all still there, but I guess at this stage they've been hauled up for the winter. But not to worry, the hut is there, the surroundings are beautiful, and we're going to look at some compositions. So thank you very much for joining me, and let's get going. This particular Fisherman's Hut is located about 6.5 kilometres from Mam Cross in Connemara. Now, Mam Cross itself sits on the N59 between Oughterard and Clifton, about 17 kilometres from Oughterard and 35 kilometres from Clifton. At the cross, take the R336 and continue for about 6.5 kilometres, and you'll see a gate with parking for 2 to 3 cars. The hut itself is traditionally known as Gaeilge as Bohan an Iascaire, which means Fisherman's Hut or Shed. It was built in 1865 as a fishing hunting lodge on the estate of Screebe House, which is owned by the Berridge family until 1959, and is now a 4-star hotel popular with anglers from all over Europe. No one lived permanently in the Bohan. They were traditionally left unlocked to provide short-term accommodation for any fishermen and hunters to use. They generally had a raised platform for sleeping and a fireplace, and although free to use, there was an etiquette expected. So if you use fuel or candles, you replace them, and the hut should be left clean and free from rubbish on departure. Hopefully I haven't put the mockers on myself by saying how still it was. There's just the tiniest little breeze has come up, and there's a tiny little ripple, but there's still a great reflection. Now, my first composition, I'm going to go really close to the water with a wide angle lens. I have a 10 to 20 on a crop body, which will give me 15 to 30 approximately. So there's these boulders here at the edge of the lake, and they all curve around to the right, and they almost lead the eye into the hut itself, and the hut is reflecting fantastically in the water, and that's going to be my composition for there. So the hut is going to be placed in the right hand third, using the rule of thirds, and the rest of it is going to curl around into it from there. So in terms of settings, it's really quite easy, no long exposures or anything. At the moment I'm at f11 ISO 100 and I'm going to start off with 1/5 of a second. Now I don't know if you can see it, but there's a tiny little tree in left of frame here, and I want to keep that in it because I just think it balances with the house. So you have the little green tree on the left hand side of the frame, and then you have the house on the right, and we'll see how that goes. First image of the day, and I'm quite pleased with this one, given that the light was so flat. I've said it many times in my videos about the importance of editing in photography and the ability to pull all the information in terms of colour, contrast and detail from a raw file. This image was very flat to begin with, but as you can see, the information was there just to be pulled out of it. Now in terms of composition, I mentioned in the video that I wanted the green trees on the left to balance the fisherman's hut on the right of the image. And I suppose it does in this case, but when I was looking at it, I think there's a lot of white rock, if you like, in the bottom left of the image. It's not really contributing or providing added benefit to the image. So I decided to try a square crop instead. And I think I prefer this one as it puts more of an emphasis on the hut itself while still containing the main boulders that surround the lake and lead the eye into the hut. So that's simple composition number one. For the second composition, I'm actually going to stay in the same place, but I'm just going to drop the tripod down. And that will probably have the effects of making these rocks in the foreground look a lot larger and stronger within the image itself. So let's have a go and we see what happens there. Okay, so at this stage it's basically the same viewpoint, but I've just lowered everything down by about, I suppose, 1 meter. So the camera is very low to the ground, but again I'm keeping the hut over in the right hand 2/3, and I'm still taking in that tree there on the left as well. Okay, so I think that's it from this location. There's a little pier that leads out into the lake just behind camera, and I'm going to head out there and get some shots from there. Before I do that, I'm going to change from the 10 to 20 to the 16 to 35 because I'll need just a little bit more reach when I go out onto the pier. This one just doesn't work for me. While I like the tones and the reflection, etc., the boulder is just too prominent in the photograph. And from the low angle with the wide angle lens, it's just taken over the entire photograph. So look, it was worth a try, but I don't think it worked. So for my third composition, I've come about halfway out onto the jetty that's coming out into the lake from the old hut. Now, just in front of me here, there are some smaller rocks in the foreground that are just jutting out into the lake. Now, they're a lot smaller than the bigger ones that were in the first two compositions, but they look well in the foreground, I think. In addition to that, I want to use the jetty itself as a type of a leading line. So as you can see, it's almost like an S-curve where the jetty itself is spinning away here to the left to meet the land, and then the land is curving in a kind of a C shape all the way around, and the fisherman's hut is going to be at the end of it. So that's the plan, and as well as that then we'll have the reflection in the water of the hut. So again, it's getting a little bit darker, so I've slowed down my shutter speed to just under a third of a second, and again I'm at f11 and ISO 100. So once again the hood is placed on the right hand third of the rule of thirds frame. Just going to give it a little bit of adjustment. I want to come back a little bit because there's an old dead tree up there on the bank, and it looks well there on the left hand side of the frame, so I want to include that, but I haven't enough with the 16 to 35, so I should get it in there now. That's better. I'm much happier with this image. I think it's much better than the low level one in composition 2. I think the jetty provides a good lead-in line as the S-curve works as it weaves away around the frame to the right hand third. I also think the dead tree works well to balance the hut on the opposite side of the image. And finally, I like the stillness in the water, and although you wouldn't call them sunset colours, I quite like the tones in the image. Now, similar to my last location, I'm going to actually drop down low because there's some lovely lichen, moss and texture in the rocks on the jetty. Now, if you are coming out here, you need to be quite careful, especially in winter when they're wet, because it can be quite slippy. So I'm just going to drop down the tripod and take in more of the jetty. Now that will make the jetty very prominent in the foreground. So it may have a good effect, or it could actually take away from the shot itself, but we'll have a go. So you can see the different perspective now, that if I went very low, you can see here the way the jetty takes over all of the image, and I've lost both the shape of the jetty and I've also lost the reflection, and the house looks just minuscule, whereas when I turn it around and I get that little bit of height, everything looks so pleasing. So, you know, like everything, there's times to go low and times to stay high, but mix it up as best you can, and you'll find something that works then. So for this composition, I've come up onto, there's a raised bank, it's slightly elevated, that surrounds the lake on this side. And it's given me that little bit of, I won't call it a bird's eye view, but an elevated look down onto the boulders within the lake and the little harbour that was built to protect the boats. Now it's a pity there's no boats there, but as I did say, it is December and they're probably taken out until at least spring. But what I can see is, I can see from this side, I can see the jetty outside the front door of the hut itself, and all the detail in the rocks that surround the little harbour. And then of course you have the lake fading away into the distance. Now for my foreground here, I have that huge rock there, going to be down in the bottom right thirds intersection, and then the remainder of the photograph is going to feature the little harbour for the boats and obviously the hut itself. Now this composition is not making the best use of the reflection that's there, but I've got a few of those already, and if you are coming here, you know, the chances of that reflection are probably small enough anyway, so this would be a good spot now for a long exposure. If there's ripples on the water, you could calm everything, and if there was some detail and some wind in it, you might get some nice streaky clouds in the sky as well, if you like that type of thing. So I'm at a f11, 100 ISO and half a second. Now that half a second, because the sky is so bland and blown out, it's just giving me a white sky. But there is some detail up there, and I would I would hope that using the linear gradient in Lightroom I'll be able to bring back that detail. Again, I have to say that given the conditions, I'm really happy with this image. Lightroom did a great job of bringing back the detail in the sky, and at the risk of repeating and repeating and repeating myself, the information within the raw file and the power of the editing software to bring back the full dynamic range that your eye can see but the camera just can't reproduce is amazing. So if there's one tip I can offer, it's to work at your editing skills and then to spend the time working to bring out the best from the images that you decide are worth editing. So when you're reviewing your images, don't just, disregard them because the light is wrong or the contrast is wrong or whatever it is. If the composition is right and the subject is good, give it a 1 star or 2 star and come back later, have a go at editing and see how it turns out, because often the final product will really surprise you. So here's a quick recap on the shots from this video shoot, which was in December 2021, and a couple of shots that I took a few weeks earlier in November when the corrugated iron lean-to, the nets and the boats were still in place. So I suppose depending on your preference, if you choose to come in summer or autumn for the boat and nets, and then leave it until winter if you prefer the cleaner look of the hut without the lean-to attached onto the side of it. So that's it from me at the Fisherman's Hut at Screebe in Connemara. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please leave a like or a comment below. If you'd like to subscribe and ring the bell, you'll be notified of my next video. So until the next time, stay safe and bye for now.